You're now listening to Sound Talent Media. Check out more shows at soundtalentmedia.com.
Hey, what's up, everyone? I'm Matt McGachy, the vocalist of Cryptopsy and the host of the Vox and Hops Metal Podcast, where I sit down with fellow metal musicians. We talk all about their lives and music while sharing killer craft beers. If you've ever wanted to sneak backstage and share a beer with one of your favorite musicians, well, Vox and Hops is the podcast for you. This week on the podcast, I dropped a killer episode with Kelly Schaefer of Atheist. There is this episode and over 440 other ones to help you enjoy life, metal, and craft beer. So what are you waiting for? It's time to become a Vox and Hops head. Cheers!
Hello. Welcome to the latest episode of the podcast. Thank you so much for tuning in this week. I think you're really going to enjoy this episode. I've been meaning to talk with Brian from Nutter Guitars for a very long time. He's a really great dude. He has a ton of experience, and it was really cool to get to know him better and dig into his musical story and his approach to guitar making and all that good stuff. I think you're really going to enjoy this episode. I just have one quick thing to get out of the way before we dive right in, and that is music stuff. Oh yeah, I've got more music coming. This Friday, the 9th, there is a new track dropping, and it is the first collab track that I have done. So if you want to go to the American Cyclops page on Spotify or wherever you stream music, it should be in just about any of the streaming stores that I'm aware of, as well as on Bandcamp and all that stuff. So yeah, June 9th, there will be a new single dropping called On Board, and it is a collaboration with Emily Hopkins, who is a harpist. And yeah, it's really cool. I'm really stoked with how it turned out. Really. It's one of the first songs I've put out with vocals in a very long time. They're, more of an instrument than an actual vocal track on this particular song, but still, I'm doing some vocalizing. So if you could go stream that on June 9th, wherever you listen to podcasts, and I will put the pre-save link in the show notes for this. That will be another American Cyclops release. And I also put a big update on that on the American Cyclops Instagram. And I'm just talking about, I won't rehash it here, but if you go to the American Cyclops Instagram page, you can see an update about the goings on with that musical project. There is a lot going on, and I'm really excited to share that with you. So yeah, that's all for this week. I think for the plugging and whatever that has to happen. All right, that's it. Let's get into the show. Hello, everyone. Welcome to another episode of the Tone Mob Podcast, the show about guitar stuff, sort of, sometimes. I'm your host, Blake Weiland, and with me today, I have Brian Nutter of Nutter Guitars. What's going on, dude?
Man, here we are. Trying to overcome the technological challenges, but I think we finally made it.
Yeah, sometimes it goes baby smooth, and sometimes I've literally fought it for like the whole hour trying to get it. And I'm just like, this is so dumb. I mean, literally just used the same thing yesterday. Yeah. It was like, click, click. All right, we're doing it. Boom. We're in. And yeah, sometimes that's just the way it goes. It makes no sense.
Yeah, man. That's how it is.
But I've been wanting to do this for a long time. We met at NAMM, and I've played some of your guitars, and I think they're really, really rad. And,
thank you.
And yeah, so... But you've had such a wild ride since we got to meet, and every time I would be like, I'm going to check with Brian to see if, now is not a good time to record. So I'm glad we finally got the chance to do it. But before we get into all of that, just tell us about yourself. How did you get started playing guitar, and how did you start making stuff?
Oh, wow. So my dad and my grandfather are both musicians. My dad plays pedal steel, and my grandfather was a fiddle player. And from the time I was born until I was about 12, Dad's band would rehearse at our house, and so they ended up with a minor record deal in Nashville in the late 70s and early 80s. Had a couple of like songs on the charts and the whole bit, and then so they left the drumsticks for me and showed me how to turn on the little practice PA whenever I was like 4, so I could sing through the microphones and all that stuff. So I was always around that kind of thing. It just seemed like it was weird that everybody else didn't have a band set up in their living room.
Right.
So by the time I'm about 12, I think that's the time where you're supposed to like not be listening to what your parents listen to. And I remember hearing Blizzard of Oz for the first time. And I had been around electric guitars my entire life, but none of them had ever made that sound. And I thought it was just the most intoxicating and sort of like evil and sinister kind of sound I'd ever heard. And I was like, I got to know how to do that. So then I start playing guitar and in, like garage bands and stuff. And by the time I'm 17 or so, things break. And of course I'm 17 and I'm broke. So I don't know how to, I can't pay for anything. I can't have anybody fix anything for me. So I start getting books and just start mangling things and plowing through until I get better at it. Just doing small repairs and that kind of stuff. And then by the time I was in my early 20s is when I first started making stuff. And, by then I'm living in Los Angeles and I'm doing sessions there, both as a recording engineer and as a guitar player and singer. And, sort of like a chance meeting with a couple of different guitar makers out there, one being Don Grosh, and another being Tom Anderson. And those two guys showed me that people make guitars and not machines. Grover Jackson said that he used to think that guitars over in Japan, they had some sort of machine where you threw a log in one end and it spit out a tuned up, perfectly finished guitar on the other end. That's sort of what I thought. I thought that there were just these gigantic machines and everything was robotic and it turns out that's exactly how Music Man does it now. But so that's come to full fruition. But at that time, I remember telling Don, I was like, "Hey man, I would love to come by the factory sometime." And he was like, "Factory? We make these things in my parents' garage."
Right.
And I was like, "Whoa, okay." So
like you
then
can do that? Like what?
Yeah. So then I bought this book called "Make Your Own Solid Body Electric Guitar," the first edition by an English gentleman named Melvin Hiscock, who actually sadly died last February. I got to talk to him a few times, throughout my career, and he was a really, really cool guy. I still keep that book on my bench today. I had the second edition, but it died in the Nashville flood in 2010. But yeah, from there on in, man, I just started messing with stuff and then moved to Nashville in like 2000 and wanted to make guitars and realized I needed to eat. So I started getting gigs, and then my playing career here kind of took off more than guitar making. So for the next 15 years or so, if you had a record deal in Nashville, I probably played for you at some point, both in country music and in some in the Christian world as well. So I played with Aaron Lines and Amanda Wilkinson and Carolyn Dawn Johnson, all three of which are Canadian artists, as well as Lone Star and Taylor Swift and some with Dierks Bentley. And I was in Keith Urban's band for a long time. And then in the Christian world, I played with both Michael Tate and Toby Mac from DC Talk, Rachel Lampa. And, so I had a pretty diverse playing career. And doing live touring things as well as session work, and then had my own thing as well, where I would go out and do solo gigs with my own band or do acoustic tours just all by my lonesome. I did Europe, or not Europe, but I did the UK like that once with an acoustic guitar on my back, a bag of merch in one hand, and my suitcase in the other, and just rode Virgin Rail all over the country.
Wow.
Yeah, it was hip.
That's amazing.
It was hip. I'd love to do it again. And then my wife and I, whenever I stopped working with Keith, my wife and I did a duo record and then a full house concert tour in 2015. So 2015, we're in my van, which is named the Creeper. And we drove all over the country twice and did 180 shows in people's living rooms. ended up with our own record deal, and had a big booking agency that was with us, and we had a manager and business manager and all that kind of stuff. And then by the end of 2015, as things do, it turned into a record ordeal as opposed to a record deal.
Ouch.
And all of it vaporized. So it's definitely not the first time I'd been through it. By the way, I can't take credit for the term record ordeal. I stole that directly from my good buddy John Bollinger, whom you guys know from Premier Guitar. John and I,
of course.
John and I worked together on a TV show called Nashville Star. He was the music director and guitar player, and I was the other guitar player. So then when that was all said and done, my wife and I were just kind of jaded by the whole thing, and we were like, what are we going to do now? And I told her, I was like, I'm going to start making guitars again. And this is October 2015. And she had only ever known me as a player. So she was like, oh, okay, sure. You're gonna make guitars. So I get all my shop put back together because we had just moved, and I come out with the first prototype, and I was like, "What do you think?" She's like, "Where did you get this one?" And I was like, "I made it." She was like, "Where?" I'm like, "Out in the shed." She was like, "Oh, no." I'm like, "Yeah, really, I did." So, and then from there on in, here we are. We're a few hundred guitars in, and just cranking away. Mm-hmm. Well, I'm finally back to cranking away after last year. So,
right, which we can definitely get into.
Yeah.
But I'm glad we went over all the other stuff because I didn't know like the full depths. Obviously, I knew you didn't just wake up one day and start making Admirals, but like
no, not at all.
But I didn't know all that other stuff. So it's good to have that overview. If you don't mind, I'm always really interested in this, and I think a lot of the listeners are as well. When somebody has had the depth of experience, specifically working directly in the music industry, like as most people think of it, like you and I are both in the music industry now still, but
yes.
It's a little more of a tangent as opposed to like being a session player or actually trying to create the art, itself. Do you have any advice for people who want to work in the world in the same way that you did? And maybe if you don't mind going over the record ordeal so some people can avoid those mistakes.
Sure. So, I mean, if you want to get into doing what I was doing, which is I was basically a hired gun, a side guy. So I was hired by, either the managers or business managers or artists or whoever, or a music director or whatever, for whatever project, to come in, and if it was a live thing, I obviously wouldn't have played on the record, so I had to learn that stuff like lick for lick, sort of cop the same kind of guitar sounds. So you're not there to be you're there to be the record and to completely spit out that thing, unless that artist will say, no, I need you to do something else, or do your own thing here. Then you could stretch and do your stuff, but primarily you're there in a completely supportive role. Now that might mean that they want you wearing all black clothes and standing in the back. We affectionately refer to that as black and back. Or you might be they might pick your wardrobe and say you have to wear this and you have to wear guy liner and spike your hair up in weird ways, or you got to wear a cowboy hat. You're there as a supportive role to whoever or whatever the vision of the artist is. So as long as you can keep that headspace and you're not there to be like, well, I'm not being featured enough. And I'm like, well, dude, you're not here for that.
That's not your thing.
Yeah, as long as you're cool with that, then right on. It can be a very good paying dead end job. It's there's only so far you can go. I had what's arguably like one of the better gigs, if not the best gig you can have in Nashville, and but that's it. That's as far as it goes. For me to go higher, Brian Ray or Rusty Anderson are going to have to die, and I'm probably not going to get the call from Paul McCartney. So
maybe not. Maybe
no. I'm not. Or Zach came back, so Ozzy's not going to be needing someone. So that's kind of how that thing works. And it's a matter of, you also, wherever you are, if you're not in Nashville or Los Angeles, then those are your options. New York is not an option. Miami's not an option. Chicago's not an option.
New York's not an option. Interesting.
Not really, because whenever it comes to, I mean, you can be in New York, but I don't see a lot of like true touring acts coming out of there. There's recording and that kind of stuff, but it's also incredibly expensive to live up there.
Yes.
So it's cheaper to live here in Nashville, but it's getting increasingly expensive. Thank you to the TV show Nashville for ruining that for us.
Mm-hmm.
But
and all the New Yorkers that are just moving to Nashville.
Dude, New York, LA, everyone. It's truly that old Sean Mullins tune. But in reverse, where he calls LA Nashville with a tan. No, the tan moved here. So, and then if you're looking like worldwide, of course, you can be in London, you could be in Hong Kong or Tokyo, and that's kind of it. So you'll have to move to a place where it's centrally hubbed, and then start getting to know people that you really that are already doing what you want to do. You have to be pretty diverse. You have to be able to play a handful of instruments. It's always a benefit if you sing. And the better you sing, the better off you are. And the more instruments you play, the better off you are. So like in Keith's band, I played electric and acoustic guitar, 6-string banjo, mandolin, mandocello, pedal steel, keys, auxiliary percussion, sang the primary part of all the high harmony. So
I can barely play guitar, so I don't think this is going to be the career for me.
Now, I say I played all those stuff, and I mean, I'm not. That doesn't mean I'm completely proficient with all of it. I say I played pedal steel, and I do have a pedal steel. I'm not a pedal steel player. My dad's a pedal steel player. I'm a pedal steel owner, but I can play a part. Like I can, really do a thing. We did the Opry one night with a guy named Bruce Boughton. Bruce Boughton is one of the top call session steel guitar players in Nashville. Played with Ricky Skaggs for many years. If you've ever heard the song Highway 40 Blues, that fantastic pedal steel solo, that's him. So we were doing a song that on the road I played pedal steel on, and Bruce, and Keith called it sort of at the last minute. He was like, "Hey, let's do this instead." And Bruce goes, "Hey, Brian, you play pedal steel on this on the road. What do you play?" And I go, "Hey, hang on. You, Bruce Boughton, are not asking me, Brian Nutter, what I play on the pedal steel. This song's in F, okay? It's, 1, 4, 5, 6 minor. There's a 2 minor in there somewhere. You're going to be fine. Trust me. You know what the intro lick is. Let's go have a beer. We'll come back and we'll do this."
Yeah, I imagine that'd be kind of like, no. It's like having Eddie Van Halen ask you what to do on a part. It's like, no.
Nope.
You just do it.
That's not happening.
Just do the thing.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah. No, whatever you're going to do is going to be way better than anything I spent months working on. So, yeah, that's that. Now, the record ordeal thing, navigating that I don't think there's no path, really. It's truly like the lottery. It's the luck of the draw. There's there are things that you have to be considerate of, you can't be a jerk. And believe me, I've had my fair share of times in life where I have been a total jerk, just completely unhappy in the situations that I'd be in. So that probably, definitely, counted as a strike against me. But you have to be willing to give up a lot of what it is you are, I think.
Okay.
You can't, the whole thing of being signed for being really creative and very talented in all of that, that's not so much the case anymore. We need to hear this kind of a song. It needs to have this kind of lyrical content. You need to look this kind of way. So a lot of that stuff is dictated. And at the same time, the record industry has changed so much, even in the last 10 years, where record labels used to be just a bank where, they would loan you the money for the record and give you a budget for promotion and for touring and all of that, and you paid that back. but you paid it back at whatever your royalty rate was. So say they're selling your then CD for $10 and you made $1 on that CD. Well, you paid back that loan with that $1. In the meantime, the record label got that $9. So the record label makes money regardless. Now they're doing what they call a 360 deal, where on a 360 deal, the labels take a piece of everything. They take a piece of your merch, your touring, all of that. So
literally every dollar that comes in, they get 30% of, or
yeah,
whatever.
they get a lot of it. So it's, you got to be able to get willing to give that up as well. So the stuff that you're seeing that's like truly creative and truly artistic, and that you're seeing more in indie, indie like rock, metal, Americana, country, any of that stuff. So in the whole ordeal of it, I mean, you can be promised the world, and trust me, you will be, until you're not. The whole thing can vaporize in a 10-minute conversation. I've had it happen a dozen times.
Yeah, I have this very cynical view on most labels. Corey Wong helped get my mindset a little bit more aligned with how it probably should be, because I was way more cynical before I talked to him. But right. I'm just like, in 2021, with my viewpoint is obviously very skewed. So music is very important to me. I'm a huge music fan, and I also am a big podcast fan. Right. And I look at this show and I'm like, well, I didn't have a label or a promoter or anything helping me get this to where people are listening to it, right? In the way that people consume digital media now. And basically podcasts and music, the way you listen to them is identical. Even up to the point of now Spotify, you're probably listening to it on the same platform. There's a good chance. So, if I didn't need any help to get people, now I say any help, I had help in that the guests who come on would be like, I was on this show. That is help. But I didn't have a promoter working with me or anything.
Sure.
And I'm able to get a decent amount of people to listen to this, which, as surprising as that is. Yeah, and I can't help but feel the same way about an independent musician. If you really grind and really scratch and really go for it, the way that we consume things these days, if what you're creating is going to resonate with people, you can get people to listen to it.
Oh, absolutely. What we're seeing now, though, is the age of rock stars is gone. I think we're gonna, particularly now after the pandemic, we're going to see less and less arena shows and stadium shows. There's probably going to be a couple, but it's not going to be like it was. There's also not a platform to make rock stars anymore. Not like whenever I was a teenager, in the mid '80s with, an MTV rolling. You knew the bass player in every band. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. Tell me you don't know that now.
No.
And that goes across any genre. You don't know. There's every band member doesn't have their own persona that they sort of promote. So it's a totally different world. But you can get out there and make a really good living. You're not going to be a gajillionaire, and they're not going to reboot Cribs and come to your place.
Right.
But it's just how it is now.
Yeah, and I don't necessarily even think that's 100% a bad thing.
No, not at all.
For the people that are working in it. I'm like, I don't know, that whole rock star lifestyle and image, it seems kind of cool from the deep outside looking in, but the further and further you get to the core of it, it's like, ooh, that doesn't seem like a really all that wonderful of a way to live, you know?
You nailed it on the head. As soon as you could get, when you get to stand behind the curtain and really look around at all of it, it's like, yeah, maybe not.
I don't really want to do that.
There's a really famous songwriter here in Nashville, Harlan Howard, who died a few years ago. But he said, "I never set out to be rich and famous, and so far it's working out just fine." And,
it's similar, this is an oversimplification, of course, but it's kind of a similar quote that I heard attributed to Bill Murray, where he's like, everyone thinks all their problems is going to, they're going to go away when they're rich and famous. And to those people, I say, why don't you just try being rich first?
Yeah, totally. Totally.
The famous part gets dicey real fast.
It's really, really tricky.
Yeah. It's kind of funny because even like the way that guitar equipment is marketed these days, generally the more successful brands have a personality behind them to a certain degree, to the point where, think about like Josh Scott or Brian Wampler, like making guitar pedals. Yeah, man. 25 years ago, did you think those guys anybody would care what they had to say on the internet?
Oh,
no.
With Wampler, I actually did, because Wampler, like 20 years ago, had it was like a little PDF that he would sell you for like 10 or 15 bucks, and it was on how to mod a list of pedals, and he had like a pile of pedals in there and all these different mods you could do. And I had that. So yeah, I bought that from him, ages and ages ago, probably 2000 or 99 or something like that, a long time ago.
I don't know when he did that. We talk about it occasionally because there for a while, and I think it's toned down a little bit. The physical copies of the original edition of that were selling for like $600.
Oh my gosh, are you serious?
And he's like, don't do it. He's like, there's mistakes in there. He's like, don't pay $600. He's like, no, don't do that.
That's
Please
awesome.
Don't do that. Yeah.
Yeah. So. Now you're absolutely right though. Now is for being a guitar maker, you have to have an Instagram account. You have to be present in that. You've got to, your face has to be a part of that. Nobody cares about your guitars more than you do. Right. So you have to get out there and really do it. And that may or may not be difficult for somebody. I don't have any problem being in front of a big crowd of people. Never have.
You're a performer, so it comes naturally.
Totally. Yeah. I mean, I've played every TV show. I've even played Oprah, which is weird, but I did. And
did she give you a car?
All this, no.
Oprah,
Dude.
Come on.
She did take all right, when we went to, this is probably like against some sort of like, non-disclosure agreement or something, but
allegedly. Say allegedly.
Yeah, Oprah's fine. People are going to like swoop in here and like rappel out of helicopters in my house. No, that when we went there, they took our phones as soon as we walked in the back door.
Really?
Yeah. Took our phones from us. We weren't allowed to communicate with anyone outside the building or take photos or anything.
I suppose with somebody like that's such a high profile people, there's like crazy people that want to kill her.
Well, I mean, I'd played Leno, God, dozens of times, and Jay even had me over to the garage. So, yeah, just a different thing.
I guess. She probably had some sort of weird experience that caused that to be
I'm sure of it.
Necessary thing.
I'm sure of it. But yeah, I mean, so if you're in front of it, if you have a problem being in front of people, it might be harder for you to really get out there and sort of promote what you're doing. But you got to do it now. Absolutely got to do it now.
Yeah, and what's really funny about a lot of guitar makers in particular, I find that specifically people who make guitars, I'm not talking about pedals or amps or anything else,
right?
They seem to be a little more introverted. And when I've invited people on the show, they're like, why does anybody care what I have to say? And it's like, well, I've also never met a boring luthier. Like, I'm sure there's one out there, but I've never met one. So
I honestly, even though I am a performer, I am a total introvert. And you have to be to want to just hold yourself up in a room with a bunch of tools and a big stacks of wood and paint and for hours and hours and hours on end. It's actually my total like kind of recharge happy place. I'm around people all the time because now I teach guitar making for Musicians Institute in Nashville.
Right.
I head up the electric guitar department, so I've got people coming at me from 16 different directions every day, as well as 2 kids under 5 whenever I get home that are doing the same. So yeah, the shop is like the recharge spot, and we all just get in there and constantly thinking on how can I make this better and how can I make this process easier, and is this cool? Are people going to dig this, or I don't know. Well,
one thing I've noticed, and it's not really what would have expected, but it's been a thing enough times that it's a trend is starting to appear. The people at Stringjoy who really excel at winding, because it takes some learning to do. It's not something you just know how to do. You have to learn it.
That is very true. Two of the current string winders at Stringjoy are my students.
That's what I'm saying. They tend to be luthiers.
Absolutely.
And I think it's that detail, that attention to detail, I think is what gives them the patience to be able to sit down and learn that process, because it's tedious.
It really is. It's so cool, though. It's the neatest thing, and the two guys that are over there couldn't be more perfect for that crew.
They're so good. Scott, I talk to Scott almost every day, and so
I love that guy.
he's fantastic.
A cool dude. Yeah.
Yes. Shout out Scott. He's my boy.
Absolutely.
No, he talks very highly of yourself as well. So, that was actually what made me go, okay, I think Brian's he's back to teach. He's probably in a good spot to do a podcast now.
Yes. Finally. Yeah, finally.
So maybe we should talk about all that. We've referenced the horrible year you've had on top of the most horrible year for most people. So
for real.
What happened to you, man? It was nonstop.
It was the dumbest thing ever. It really, really was. I mean, so everybody had a horrible year last year with the pandemic. Mine was a little worse.
A little
right after
worse than most people. Let's be honest.
Right after NAMM in 2020, it was February 7th, and I had done a lot of great business at NAMM, and things were really, really moving along. The guitars were going to be put in places I really never dreamed, and everything was looking so good. And February 7th, we were closing out class for the evening. We go till 10 o'clock every night. So that night, one of my students said, "Hey, do you want some sunflower seeds?" And I took a handful of sunflower seeds with the shells on them, popped them in my mouth like I normally would, and they sort of got a little stuck. I found out later that I had a hiatal hernia, which is sort of like a stricture where your esophagus goes into your stomach. So they were sort of sitting there, right, all chewed up and everything. So I took a big swig of water, and when I did that, the shells shredded my esophagus and put all of that shrapnel out into my chest cavity. It was the scariest and most excruciating kind of pain I'd been through to date. Little did I know, in the next few months, I was going to experience considerably worse, but...
yay. Hooray.
Yeah. So I didn't know what was wrong. I thought I'd just scratched the inside of my esophagus or whatever. So, I'm drinking water and everything is looking good. And what's even funnier is that the lights in the creeper, the van, the headlights, I had to replace them. So I'd bought headlights that morning and I was going to change them out. Well, I still had to change them out. So I changed out the headlights in the van, and I start driving home, and I'm starting to notice that it's getting harder and harder for me to breathe. To a point where now I'm trying to drive and going. The reason for that is I was internally drowning because I was drinking water that was filling my chest cavity. My lungs couldn't expand.
Holy crap, man.
So
I just wanted some sunflower seeds.
That's it. I just wanted a handful of sunflower seeds. So then, I pull over, call 911. They take me in. I discovered that I have a very high tolerance to high-level pain medication. So Dilaudid, which is supposed to be one of the most heavy ones, does nothing for me. It's like Kool-Aid. After 7 doses of high-level pain medication, including Dilaudid, morphine, and finally fentanyl, the shortness of breath subsided. I passed out for about 30 seconds, came back to, and finally could tell them what happened. They sent me to the hospital, did a huge surgery where they went in through my left side, through my ribs, collapsed my left lung, and attempted to do repair to my esophagus, and then put in a stent in my esophagus to prevent anything from further leaking out into my chest cavity. I was in and out of the hospital for about 3 months, continued to get an infection, was losing weight at a rapid rate, and got... I had double pneumonia 2 or 3 times. I went into septic shock a couple of times. I went from 187 to 137.
Jeez.
Yeah. Yeah, my typical like touring fighting weight would have been around 160 or 165, which is where I sit now, which is good. So when my wife got pregnant, she was like, "You're not staying skinny if I'm getting fat." So I put on weight with her, and she dropped it, and I didn't. But I found this fantastic diet plan that I don't recommend to anyone. So after that 3 months, my wife finally like, "I'm not taking you back to that hospital." So we go to Vanderbilt, where they tell me that, as the surgeon put it, had you come to me 2 weeks later, there wouldn't have been a path forward. So I told him, I don't know if I can survive that surgery again. And he said, well, I don't know if you can either. And even told my wife to prepare for the worst. So they go back in, the same thing, through my left side, through my ribs, collapse the left lung, do this repair. I remember waking up in recovery. I'm the only person in the room, no nurses, no nothing. I open up my eyes, I see the lights and stuff, and I lift my head up and I look around, and I remember saying this. I went, I made it. Cool. And then from there on in, I was on feeding tube and had a long-term IV in me, walked around and had drain tubes sticking out of the side of me that had these little like things that would catch anything that actually happened to slip by the stent. By the way, I had like 6 or 7 different stents. I was put under about a dozen times last year.
Jeez.
So by July, mid-July, the hole had finally healed up. And I was starting to put on weight, and I went back to work at the school, because the school's shut down, by the way, for the pandemic. I likened the whole ordeal at the very beginning, like whenever they put me down and I'm sort of like coming out of it, and I'm constantly, in a morphine and hydrocodone haze, that it was sort of like being Rick Grimes in the first episode of The Walking Dead, where I sort of like come out of my stupor and the whole world has gone to hell, and just couldn't figure out what was happening. So the school opens back up in early October, and I went back to work then, but I was still weak and, having like digestive and sort of like intestinal issues where I would be like heavily nauseated. Like I would have to disappear from class for about 45 minutes and go lock myself in the library. So until everything sort of mellowed back out. But now, well, then in December, on top of all of that, my wife says, hey, why don't we put our house on the market just to see what happens? And sure enough, our house sold the day before it was supposed to go on the market. We moved. I moved to the shop, moved everything. And then, continued to get better. And just over the last few months, I'm finally, and I think I said this like maybe 8 months ago, I finally feel normal, but now I really do finally feel normal, and have really, really started to get back after the whole guitar building thing. And so Summer NAMM, I'm going to be at Summer NAMM, and it's sort of going to be like my kind of reintroduction to the world and trying to get the whole ball rolling again, because it ground to a devastating halt with the injury and then with the pandemic. So that's where we're headed here.
And you're probably never going to eat sunflower seeds ever again.
Funny enough, my first day back at work, that student brought me exactly the same amount of sunflower seeds.
And you're like,
I kept them in a small paint mixing cup on my desk for the longest time, just as sort of like a reminder.
I don't like sunflower seeds that well. I would never. Totally. I mean, I'm like they're all right. I'm kind of neutral on sunflower seeds as it is, but now I feel like not eating them in solidarity with you now, just like despite real, David's sunflowers. Try to kill my buddy over here.
It was intense.
You can't see me because I got my camera off because I'm all disgusting right now. But
I'm covered in sawdust.
I was just the whole time. I'm just like, I knew that it was bad, and I knew you had dealt with several repeated things, but I didn't quite know the full extent of it.
Yeah,
and it's crazy how something so simple can be so devastating, and the things we take for granted just I mean, it's kind of, it makes you almost a little bit paranoid when you hear stories like that.
The infection in my had spread to my bones as well, and they told me that the pain that I was experiencing there was equal to someone in stage 4 bone cancer.
Oh, good. That's great. And pain medication doesn't work that well for you. I also have that same thing going on as well.
So I do well. Like morphine and fentanyl work pretty well. Hydrocodone made me feel better, but that was it.
I had a pretty serious. I haven't had fortunately, knock on wood, I haven't had too many experiences with that, but I had a pretty serious eye injury, and that's the first thing they did was hit me with the fentanyl, and I was like, when's it supposed to stop hurting? I thought it was supposed to stop hurting. And
same conversation.
They were like, this will do it. And I'm like, okay. And then I'm just waiting. I'm like, it still hurts really bad. In fact, I think I'm going to throw up. And they're like, we'll give him another one. And I don't even hardly remember the whole thing, but it was like, I thought this was supposed to work. And then they gave me some stuff, and I stopped taking it because I was like, this isn't making me feel any better. And I know it's not good for you. So
totally.
I'm just not going to have it anymore. It's weird. It's a weird thing because some people take it and they're like, "This is the greatest thing I've ever experienced in my life."
Oh,
in fact,
real.
I want to ruin my life for it. I didn't have that experience, fortunately. I guess I don't know if it's fortunately or unfortunately.
I would call that very fortunate.
Yes.
Yeah, but I still got to feel all the withdrawal whenever I had to come off of it. So that was fun.
Geez. Now I'm extra glad I didn't.
Yeah.
take more of it.
I actually had to withdraw from morphine twice. So that was. Yeah.
You'd think by now, with all the technology we have, that they would have figured out something other than opiate-based pain medication by now. But no, not so much.
Well, actually, they're and I was part of this as well. They're using like nerve medication as a non-opiate pain source, and that stuff, it only kind of works. It has to get into your system first. Like you can't just take the first one and be like, "Hey, that's way better." You've got to take like 5 days with it, and then
weird,
before you actually start to feel maybe it's a little better, or maybe I'm just better. I don't know. So
that stuff's all very strange. The way your body processes, and the way different people process things.
For real,
you know, I've heard with like opiate stuff, some people are like, it didn't take the pain away. It just made me not care. And I'm like, that also sounds scary. I don't know.
It is. Oh man, that's no joke. It kind of does that. I remember the feeling of before we went to Vanderbilt. I was by this point I was sleeping like 20, 22 hours a day, and really couldn't get up and move around, and just not caring that much. So. Yeah. And then when my wife dropped me off at Vanderbilt, it's May. So it's like, I want to say May 14th, 13th, something like that. So it's warm. And because of the pandemic, I'm sitting outside with my bag in my lap in a wheelchair with a blanket over me because I'm freezing, and a mask on, and just sort of sitting there like a frail little old man waiting to go in. Wow. And she had to leave me like that.
That's so depressing.
Oh, it was terrible.
That's horrible.
Yeah, it was terrible. But
and looking back on that stuff though, now like now that you've gotten through it, you got to feel fantastic now by comparison. It's just like,
for real,
Superman.
Dude, I can run again. I can all my strength's back. My right arm had atrophied. My shoulder had atrophied somehow from how they would position me in surgery. Mm-hmm. So I couldn't lift a guitar with my right arm. Like if it was hanging on a hook on the wall, I physically couldn't lift it off. Not an acoustic guitar, nothing. I mean, I couldn't hold my arm straight out to the side because I wasn't strong enough to do it.
Wow. Well, yeah, I can't imagine that you did that lateral raise movement ever. Like, so that kind of makes sense.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it was weird.
Wow. But for how traumatizing that is and how much like your body had to go through. Honestly, though, like now that I've heard the full story, like wow, you really snapped back pretty quick. Like you look good. You look good.
Thank you. No, I did just fully determined. You know, it was dying was not an option. I have too much stuff to get done.
That's right. You got too many guitars to make.
Yeah, for real. For real.
Let's talk about the guitars a little bit. Now that we went through the horrible process, I'm so glad you're feeling better. That's
sure.
That is fantastic that you're back on top of things and never eating sunflower seeds again.
Never.
Talk about your guitars a little bit. What was the first design that you came up with? Like, this is a Brian Nutter guitar.
Like I think all of us go through the initial stage of like doing Fender-esque things. So the very first stuff that I ever made the very first guitar I ever made actually was based on a I can't even remember the model of it now. It's a Squier, 23.5 scale. Oh crud! I don't remember what it was called, but it was based on that. But it's going to be 25.5-inch scale. And then didn't like that, and then did basically like a super strat kind of a la Tom Anderson, John Suhr looking thing. And I called that the WM for working man, and then I had a sort of a telly version of it and called that the WMT. And I liked those, but I never felt like it still didn't scream me. And also figured that, if I was going to do this, then I'm probably going to get buried in just a mountain of Fender clones. So, one night in the shop with a beer and a cigar, I sit down in front of a big chunk of MDF, and I started drawing and started doing like a lot of straight line kind of things, and the Astro Captain came out of that.
Nice.
And then I remember like looking at that guitar, just a drawing the first time, and was like, yeah, that's me. Cool, I can do this. So made those, and then thought, okay, I need something else to go along with this, and I've designed two other things that were straight line. One I called it the Cadet. I took it to Summer NAMM a few years ago, and nobody really bit at that. And then there was another one that I did, and I've only ever done two of them, and they're super short scale. They're 22.25 scale.
Oh wow!
But I called that the Ensign, and I made two. I made one shell pink and one sonic blue, and those are now hanging in my kids' rooms because one for my son and one for my daughter. Then I came up with the Admiral. I decided I was going to do a set neck, and the Admiral also is more of for a lack of a better term, more of a Fender size, even though it's not a Fender-looking guitar by any stretch of the imagination.
No, not at all.
It's still very angular, and but it's not angular in like in a metal sense, because I don't have any real points. So it's I always tell everybody, if George Jetson had a rock and roll band, what guitar would he play? And it would probably be mine. So the Astro Captain is got all the bells and whistles. There's 3 humbuckers. You can select any one of the humbuckers or any combination of the humbuckers. You can reverse phase on any of the pickups. You can coil cut them, and you can also, with them in coil cut mode, using the phase selectors, you can select what side of the humbucker do you want to be on. So
cool.
Pickup options with that one are, sky's the limit pretty much. Then the Admiral is electronically way simpler. It's just 2 mini hums with volume, tone, and a three-way toggle. Very, very simple guitar. I also have the Astro Commander, which is same shape and everything as the Astro Captain, but it doesn't have a vibrato. and it just has 2 humbuckers and a volume tone, very kind of explorer style, if you will. I'm reintroducing 3 other what I call swoopy models. So they're not straight line, they're curvy at Summer NAMM this year. One are 2 set necks and a bolt-on. The bolt-on is called the Atlas. The other 2 set necks are the Ranger and the Navigator. The Navigator is kind of, not to compare it to anything, but to give you like a visual idea of it. It's more like a Firebird and an RD if Framus did it together.
All right. Yeah.
And then the Ranger is the Ranger and Atlas are both very Japanese, like 60s Japanese influenced. So, which is my other kind of like favorite cool looking guitars. As much as I love like Telecasters, if I never see another one again, I'm totally cool with that.
Right. Yeah, I understand.
Yeah, like the world doesn't need any more Telecasters. We have enough to go around to everybody.
Don't worry, we're making more.
Yeah, for real.
We're making more, baby.
Exactly. So that's what's coming. And then I'm also at Summer NAMM, I'm going to be debuting what will be the Korean production guitars.
I didn't know you were doing that.
Mm-hmm. We're going to start with an Astro Captain and Astro Commander. So they're going to be slightly different. In the Astro Captain's not going to have all the bells and whistles. Instead of having 3 humbuckers with the phase switches and the coil cuts, it's going to have 3 humbucker-sized P90s and none of the other, no phasing and no coil cuts.
Gotcha.
And the Commander will be as it would be. So there won't be sparkle finishes available on either one of those. The Astro Captain will have metallic finishes, and then the Commander will have like 50s car color, sort of sonic blue, shell pink, that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
So yeah, I'll have 2 of those at Summer NAMM coming up. So there's a pile of stuff that I've been like working on and while I was in the hospital, I just to stay active and keeping my mind going, I learned CAD and got into being able to do stuff on CNC as well as doing all the handwork as well.
The one that always sticks in my mind, like your guitars have this kind of George Jetson, like modern yet retro thing going on for the most part. But the one that
futuristic.
Yeah, there you go. The one that sticks in my head though, because I'm kind of a little bit of a metalhead, is that flat black and red Admiral that I played. I can never stop thinking about that guitar. I'm like, damn, I
got to do more of that.
I love the vibe on everything else. I do, but that one was like so different in every way.
For real,
like,
yeah.
It's so good.
Most of my guitars have sparkle finishes on them. I always tell everybody I have glitter in my soul and in my ears because that stuff gets everywhere.
Totally.
But that one, man, I don't even know why I did that one the way I did, because it was, I'm in the paint booth and we're like maybe a week and a half out of NAMM. And I got this guitar and I'm like, all right, what to do with it? And I'm about to put binding on. And then it hit me. I was like, all right, I think I'm going to do a rat rod. I don't know why.
Okay.
So,
yeah.
So I looked around and found red binding on Amazon. And once I got the binding on it, I was like, yeah, flat black. I was actually going to put on that particular guitar, because I used to restore and race vintage motorcycles. I was going to put my racing number plate on it. But ran out of time, and I think it probably would have detracted from the overall aesthetic of the thing in hindsight. And I'm really happy it turned out the way it did. But yeah, that one is going to become a thing because a lot of people talked about that particular guitar. So coming up later in this year is some parts of my shop are going to get automated. So I will actually have specific production versions of all of these guitars. And that will just have certain designated colors. And then also throughout the month, I will do a very select number of truly hand-built stuff, just like I do now, where, I'm in front of the pen router and the deadhead sander and all that kind of stuff, very old school methods. Mm-hmm. So, yeah, a lot of stuff on the way. It's been a year and a half in preparation.
It's exciting. It's very exciting.
Yeah.
I can't
Looking
help
forward to it.
but think about that guitar, and I'm sure I'm not the first person to say this to you. I can't help but think what like a completely murdered out version would look like. Just all black, just all flat black. Like,
yeah,
that'd be cool. I mean, the black and red though is much more. It's a departure, but it's much more in line with the rest of the brand, I think.
True.
Than that would be. And so it makes sense. I still think that. I don't know why. I think about that. When I think of your guitars, I think of that one, which doesn't make a lot of sense when it because of the way everything else is.
No, I've considered doing that one again the same way, but all the parts that were red would be gloss black. So it would still have the multiply black or white binding, and then the outer layer of binding would be gloss black, and the pick guard would be 3-ply black.
Right.
So
that'd be hot.
Yeah, and then black hardware as opposed to the chrome hardware that I put on that one.
Yeah, that'd be kind of a tuxedo vibe on that thing. That'd be nice.
Yeah.
Good stuff, man.
Yeah, man.
I'm super excited to see it come out. I'm excited that you're doing well, and you've got some big things on the horizon, so that's really cool. Really cool.
Thank you. Yeah, now it's a matter of making it all happen.
I understand. I do. Well, we're getting close to the hour mark, and I have a few classic questions I want to ask before we wrap this thing up. But before that, here's your chance to, say whatever you want to say. If you got a, great Aunt Marge you want to thank, or if you got a recipe you want to share with people, or just anything you want to talk about right now.
Man.
Now is your chance to tell a few thousand people.
Well, we talked about like the whole ordeal that I had to go through last year, and if I'm only alive because of my wife like pushing everyone. She, if not for her, I was in too much of a drugged up stupor to do any kind of, mediating on my own part. So she's the one that like fought all the doctors and all the nurses and all the hospitals and the insurance people and everyone else. And if it wasn't for her, I wouldn't be sitting here talking about cool guitars or, any other kind of goofiness or anything for that matter. So my wife truly deserves the huge shout out and the huge thank you to my wife, Blake Nutter. So there you go.
Blakes are the best.
Uh-huh.
I mean, wait a minute. No, yeah, that is important. I mean, you got to have those people in your life, or things just, they get very difficult very fast. So
for real,
I'm glad she was there too.
Me too, man. And when I remember going into the ER where they were going to do surgery, and the nurse that what I call caught me, basically, they wheel me in. She said, "Is your wife coming?" I was like, "Yeah." She said, "What is her name?" And I said, "Blake." And she said, "Okay, what did you say?" I said, "Blake, like Blake Lively, but way hotter." And so my wife shows up, right? And she goes, "Wow, you're right. I thought you were joking." I was like, No, she's way hotter than Blake Lively." Take that, Ryan.
Yeah. Yeah. Ryan. Oh, boy. All right, man. All right, let's get into the classic questions, and we'll wrap up the main part. So, first one. What is your favorite Boss pedal?
Ooh, that's a great one. Man. You know what? My favorite Boss pedal is probably the GE7 Graphic EQ.
Okay. That doesn't get enough love.
No, it's like one of the most useful, like, fix everything kind of deals.
Yep. It's like this room sounds weird, because especially when you're touring around you realize that different venues, they've got different things going on, and the setting that you used in Chicago is not going to work in the venue in Austin.
Exactly.
And the G7 is there for you.
You're on a, you got some sort of backline rental amp, and it's like, wow, this isn't working. Turn on the GE7.
Play with the sliders.
Yeah, man, mess with it.
Mm-hmm.
It will get you there. Yeah.
Good plug. And they're everywhere, and they're bomb-proof.
Yeah. You can buy them on, all the used guitar websites for $40 every day of the world.
All right, last question, and this is the one that gets people kind of fired up. What's your favorite kind of pizza?
Ooh. Man. I sort of go back and forth between like true Manhattan to St. Louis.
Okay.
So both like thin crust, obviously Manhattan's got like the big round pie, but then St. Louis will cut it up into little squares. But yeah, that's my favorite kind of pizza. Thin crust with like not a lot on it, really. If I have a classic, it's probably like pepperoni, Italian sausage, and jalapenos.
Okay. Oh yeah. You're a man after my own heart. I'm not intimately familiar with St. Louis style pizza the way I am the New York style.
Yeah, the whole Chicago thing it's too much for me. Not that I don't like it, but it's if I have a preference, that's what I'd go with.
So I was recently introduced, and the listeners are probably getting tired of me saying this, but I was recently introduced to the other Chicago style pizza, or what some Chicago people refer to as the real Chicago style. And that's the tavern style thin crust. And it's one of the best pizzas I've ever had in my entire life. I didn't know. Oh, I had no idea.
Totally.
Nice. Well, thank you so much for coming on, man. Everybody make sure you go check out his guitars. They're awesome, and he's a good dude. And
thank you.
Yeah,
you can find it all on Instagram at Nutter Guitars, nutterguitars.com at the website, and also just look for Nutter Guitars on Facebook.
There you go. All right, everybody. For Brian, this is Blake, and as always, folks, good luck and good tones. There you have it, folks. Thank you so much for tuning in to this episode of the podcast. And if you need more conversation with myself and Brian, and we did get into some very Taylor Swift specific things, which I really enjoyed, there is more waiting for you over on Patreon. Over on Patreon, for $5 a month, you get extra episodes beamed directly to your ears in your preferred podcast player. And it's more conversations. Sometimes they're very, very in-depth, and it's always a good time. And you help support the show and keep this thing going. Literally help keep the lights on around here. Pays my electric bill, and I cannot thank the patrons enough for the support they've shown over the years. And if that sounds like something you'd like, please pop over to patreon.com/tonemob and check it out today. And if not, no worries. The most important thing you could do is share this. I just found another podcast because one of my friends directed me to it, and I'm really, really enjoying it. And that's usually how people find things, is when they're shared between friends and colleagues and all that jazz. So if you could, just send the link to this podcast to one of your friends this week, and I would really, really appreciate it. Preferably one that you think might care. Your cousin Stu may not care, and you don't need to bother him with that. But if you have a person in your life that you think might get something out of this, please shoot it their way. Thank you, everyone, for the support. Please go check out the American Cyclops release. I have another one coming, like I announced. I'm going to be dropping singles. I've got albums in the works. It's all good. It's fun times. Thank you all for the support. You make it possible. Talk to you next time. One last thing before we totally sign off here. I just want to remind you that if you do any shopping at Stringjoy, that's Stringjoy guitar strings made in Nashville, that will help me out as well. As I've said for years, I'm heavily involved in that company, and I really do think they're making the best products on the market. So if you would like to try custom strings, go to tonemob.com/stringjoy and check them out today. I seriously love what the team down there is doing. I help them out with all kinds of things, and by you supporting them, you are also supporting me as well. And hey, you need some strings, so why not get some custom strings just for your guitar and playing style? Again, the link for that is tonemob.com/stringjoy, and that will take you right to their website, and you can do all your shopping through there, and that will help everyone involved out. So thank you very much. Talk to you next time. We are brought to you by the wonderful folks at Gun Street Wiring Shop. Yes, Gun Street Wiring Shop. I've talked about them before. I used to say based out of Bend, Oregon, but guess what? Sean moved to my neck of the woods. Sean's in Portland. Sean is awesome and has helped me with a bunch of stuff lately. And if you have wiring needs for your guitar, he can help you too. If you want to get weird with it, he can get weird. If you just need to spruce things up a little bit, there's your guy. He takes all the guesswork out of doing your guitar wiring, and he makes it simple, and his customer service is top-notch, and I can't say enough good things about Gun Street as a company. I really respect Sean and what he's all about, and the product is top-notch. I've got 3 different guitars that now have Gun Street harnesses in them, and I could not be happier. So go to gunstreetwiringshop.com and check them out.